Brain integration is an idea that's passed around when learning is a challenge or when the memory is not working as well. My guest today has devoted her dance career and her passion for providing the best for her dance students and educators to creating the space for learning to happen. Most people consider that learning just happens because you want to grow and gain a skill. However, when we're nervous, have expectations, maybe we're being watched by others or taught from a different perspective than our learning style, or maybe we're not ready to even learn today, we can block even the best lessons that are given before us. My guest today is Mariah-Jane Thies. She's been trained in brain gym and touch for health and has a background with rhythmic movement as well, and understands the power of the brain and the connection of learning to movement. Her exercises for dancers and educators have highlighted creating the optimum learning environment, as well as the best support for delivering the information for ease of gaining skill. Mariah-Jane also has an incredible creativity brain. I love conversations with her because she can create ideas and opportunities with examples from everyday things that completely change how you think about an idea, a movement, or an action. And this is a special gift because there are many educators who cannot bring that kind of bag of tricks into the learning environment, and she can really optimize with it. Today, Mariah-Jane and I will be exploring how Mariah-Jane got into this kind of work, how she's changing the way people look at dance and learning, and how she's evaluating the traditional ways of teaching dance with the efficient ways of teaching dance. As promised, with Season 2, we're taking a deeper dive into the power of BioEnergetic Wellness tools and how these tools can transform lives and well-being. Thank you for coming along for this journey of discovery. This is Season 2, Episode 2, Creating the Radiant Dancer and Dance Educator with Mariah-Jane Thies. So continuing tradition, Mariah-Jane, welcome. How are you? You're all set for the day. We talked about tea and having a cup of tea with us, but it's hot both. You're on the West Coast, I'm on the East Coast. So tell me what you've got in your cup of tea today.
Well, I literally just have water because that's what I'm going to need on this hot day. Often I start with hot water, get the digestive system going. Today it's cool water because I need that. But my special cup comes from my British heritage of my mom, the Keep Calm and Carry On logo or slogan. And I actually got it in London when I was there and making a pilgrimage to actually meeting with the head of the RAD, which maybe we'll talk about later. So that's World Academy of Dance based in London. So this feels very much like mother roots and my ballet roots.
Oh, beautiful. That's awesome. And I wanted to set the intention for our meeting today. Goal setting and intention are part of my studies and what I really am passionate about. So I chose the apple passion tea today. And I'm just going to read you the intention that's on the back of the package. I embrace the opportunities that I've been given and allow them to bring joy to my life. And I'd say you and I both kind of resonate with that. And originally when I was setting up for this podcast, in my mind was my friendship teacup that someone who really supported me in my dance studio and helped me to paint, clean, set up, bring people in, everything. Kim Becker, she was lovely. She gave me this cup of tea as an opportunity to share friendship. And that's kind of what I was thinking about when I was setting this up. But it was too hot today for that. So I moved over to a drink that was made by Andrea Beaton, who lives down the way at Beaton's Delights. She has a little kiosk on the corner of Main Street in Mabu. And so I have in here, it's oat milk with apple passion tea and a little bit of maple syrup from the area. And so it's a cold drink for me today. But I wanted to really set up our intention today of what apples provide for us, the cinnamon, the nutmeg, that home feeling. And then what that means for you and I, because we really are at home in the dance studio, we're at home in movement. And you and I are both at home with Touch for Health and Brain Gym and the activities that really engage the energy system in the body. So I'm hoping that's what happens today. So we'll each have a sip. Our intention is set for our conversation, and let's dive in. So when you first started to explore the BioEnergetic Wellness tools in Touch for Health and Brain Gym, what did you find about those tools when you discovered them?
Well, first, I actually want to give the little funny story of how I first discovered them. I was starting my own dance studio in 1999 and busy painting. You mentioned about your friend helping you. I'm like, yes, I'm painting, I'm building, I'm doing everything. And yet I was still going downtown. I'm in Vancouver, so I was still going downtown to take dance classes and saw a flyer up there of a dance workshop over on Vancouver Island. And I don't know what I was thinking, except for to go totally drawn to it. And I left in the middle of building my studio in August for a September start. I left for 2 weeks to go take this dance intensive with a gentleman by the name of Bill Evans, where I got introduced to the developmental movement patterns. And that changed my world ever since. He's been a mentor since 1999. The developmental movement patterns, so a lady by the name of Anne Green Gilbert put them into the brain dance, what she calls the brain dance. So boom, now I'm involved in the brain dance, and I'm going down to Seattle to study with her, buying her books, just getting into it. Fast forward to 2008, and I'm Googling brain dance because I want to know more. And I was feeling kind of alone being up in Vancouver, one of the only people that was currently doing the brain dance. Googling brain dance, and on the same page, I guess I scrolled far enough, I came across Brain Gym on the same page, because I guess brain and something about movement or dance, I don't know, shows up. I'm immediately intrigued, of course, and wind up talking to one of my best friends who we sort of have been supporting each other in business. And it turned out her husband was a Brain Gym instructor. And in all of our years talking, that had never come up. I don't know why. So he's also a grade 2 school teacher. So I guess that's sort of the piece I knew. So what happens next? Well, of course, I take my first Brain Gym course. And I actually took that during the summer that I was going through a divorce after like 20 years together. And so when I think of Brain Gym, I can't help but think of the threads of going compelled to be drawn to something that gave me brain dance, and then compelled to know more Brain Gym. And then my feet get wet in it during probably one of the most difficult summers of my life. And I'll tell you, I took it with the sort of back of my mind to going, this is going to help my students, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like it saved me. Like I was not doing well. I was trying to manage my life falling apart and still trying to run a business and all that. And so Brain Gym and me started out very much like it's saving me. And I was doing the Brain Gym balances, and I would take on big topics. Like sometimes doing a Brain Gym balance, we practice in class doing just kind of a little thing, because you're mostly learning the process or the movements. And I'm like, no, I'm going to take on the big things because I need it. So I was very thirsty when I first got into Brain Gym, and the transformations it was making in my life, enabling me to keep going, were amazing. And so off I go. And that was 2008. And then I just started to gobble up as much as I could and got certified by 2014 after traveling all over, and now on a very skinny budget thanks to the divorce. But I was determined. And so it was sort of this equal learning and healing. I was like, well, look at that. I can learn and be able to help others. And I'm kind of getting this wonderful paid therapy because I would do so much the work on myself. Now, honestly, I don't think I'd recommend that. I think I probably did a little too much. I'm learning that less is more, but I didn't know it then. So,
but it's one of the key things too, right? When you go to take a workshop as an educator, you're always thinking about how to pass that to the next person. That's what your brain is always trying to. How can I help serve in a better way? And we don't take the time to stop and, how could I serve myself? Where can my inner compassion come from first before I give my outer compassion? And when you do a workshop like these ones, like the Brain Gym or Touch for Health or Therapeutic Touch, all of them, you are balancing yourself for the whole time you're at the workshop, which is like, mega sessions with an individual person, but you get to do this over and over. And the other thing is you get the benefits of the people in the classroom and the things they're going through and balancing themselves. So everybody gets to share kind of the release of all that, and then the joy of what's on the other side with these tools. And I think we forget about that when we're going to sign up for a class, particularly if you're signing up for a dance class.
I think, yeah, absolutely. And I'll say, when you're busy working with each other, doing these types of balances, sharing, for me, I'm a crier. So something comes up and I'm going to be crying about it. And the friendships that you build, going to like the brain gym conferences, year after year after year until COVID. I mean, it was like a family visit, right? Because you get so close when you're working on these things. Mm-hmm. But I have to say, you're absolutely right. This idea of, yes, we're taking it to be able to help others, but are we helping ourselves first? Mm-hmm. And then ironically, I guess probably because of my dance background of what I found I did is I got very much into the brain side of it, the brain integration, using the movement. Okay, cool. I got that. And it was a couple of years in before I really got, ironically, more of the body piece, because I was pushing myself so much. This is studying the reflex work, where I'd almost be blowing my circuits because there was too much change being expected of my body. And one friend, thankfully, finally was just like, why don't we ask your body if it's ready to do this? Or whether you should observe this one. Maybe you're going to do 3 out of 4 of the balances today in class. Maybe you're only going to do 2. And I'll never forget that moment where it was the asking permission of my own body to do the learning. And mm-hmm. and to honor and respect that sometimes it says no. It's like we're dealing with enough. And so that day, and then all the subsequent classes through it, really shifted my, it really anchored a lot, this idea of just because you're showing up eager to learn, and I think of this with my students all the time, doesn't mean that you're always ready to learn. And therefore that integration piece and all these things, but also going, sometimes it's okay to just, plateau or just observe, and just, it's almost this trust of all the things going on behind the scenes in our bodies and our brains and everything, and just go, it's busy, it's fine. It'll let you know when you're ready for more. And that has been a huge lesson in every area of my life. And I don't think I would have got it if I hadn't delved into this work.
And one of the things that I noticed from Therapeutic Touch, we do a session where it would be 3 people. So you have somebody who's receiving, somebody who's offering, and then you have someone who holds the space. And what's been so delightful about online is you can do it online, and it's so incredibly profound, but it's the person who holds the space that changes everything. And we don't think about that when we're in a class. And we certainly don't think of that in a dance class, because you shouldn't be sitting on the side. That means you're not working hard enough. But sometimes just that holding the space, you are supporting the changes that are happening in all the people around you. And you're like the bass drum, holding the resonance for it. And it has such a profound change on yourself, as well as what goes on in the room, which is really interesting.
As soon as you say that, I think I've got an added element of what my intention will be, and share it with the students, because I do a lot of peer sharing where half the group watches and half the group's performing. And it's to be able to develop the eye and the feedback giving of those watching, and then learning to receive feedback, and also being watched is part of being in dance, right? But I wonder if either the people watching, maybe they've got their role, maybe that's when I shift into, I'm just holding the space for this exchange. And that's a new piece for me. So, yeah.
That's an interesting way to think about it too. And I was just thinking about when you ask dancers to, go to the side and wait, and then you'll showcase it the next time, right? And they go over to the side. Some will be, the keeners that'll like run the whole thing so that they can practice it one more time on the side, and they're kind of moving. And then you have the ones that completely tune out, and then they go off, kind of in their head somewhere else. But if you ask them to hold the space, and if you just have them hold their hands, not that it has to be up. I'm just demonstrating for those people on the podcast, my hands are up in the air, but it's the palms facing towards the group. And so you can do that with the hands down. They don't have to be held up. They could be held down. But when you put the palms in, that gets everybody's enzymes starting to balance in the body. It automatically will go wherever it needs to go. So it never occurred to me before, if you ask the group on the side to just stand and hold the space, their feet are connected to the floor, they're grounded, their hands are connecting and making this energetic commitment to everyone. And then how would that transform what everybody can remember and what they can't remember, you know? Yeah.
And just think of the level of respect you're learning about everybody else's support and the piece that you play, and that idea that we're all in this together, that learning isn't as solo a pursuit as we think it is. It's a group pursuit because it always involves the energy around us and how that's affecting us. And actually, one of the main, for those of you on the podcast, I've got my arms reaching forward. One of the main ballet positions is demi-bras, where I'm there with my palms out. And often I talk the imagery of, holding your dozen roses or giving the audience a nice big French loaf or something. But it could be a nice idea instead to be like, no, we're holding the space. There I am. I'm holding your,
yeah.
Like that.
Yeah, it's pretty profound too. If you're thinking, just as you're saying that, and I'm picturing ballet, and I'm picturing that music playing, that classical music in the background, and the flow that comes from it. But when you know how you're going to touch your audience, and when you say, "I offer this to you," just with that hand gesture, then the audience has the opportunity to say, "Thank you," and I'll receive. Instead of "Here's the performance," right? Watch me, but instead you're saying, "Let's play together," and that completely changes
the
connection that you have.
Oh, I love that. Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, I've got students that do ballet exams, and I'm sure there's a way to that intention of how you run in and first sort of say hello, and that's energetic stage that can be set. So far, I've just used extra little tactics like putting a dab of peppermint oil on them all so that they're all nice and perky, and that there's just this little hint of peppermint that the examiner is picking up on and doesn't know why. She feels so darn good when these girls run in. Been doing that one for a long time.
That's great.
Yeah. Good. Okay, now what was your original question? Oh my gosh, you wanted to know how it's affected me. Wow. Yeah. I guess that's sort of an answer. And then brain gym conferences was where there was extra training that you could stick around for, days after and do Touch for Health. And so that's when I got into that. And it was also then brain gym conferences, ones where I got to actually go to Ottawa and stay with my sister all the time and get to start sharing this with her, where the reflex work was, again, additional things you could stay for. So I would go do these conferences for like a week, 10 days at a time, all over. Just take all that I could.
And then out of that whole exploration, your latest, because this is now, a few decades, years of exploring, dabbling in things. And so now you've honed into the Radiant Dance Teacher, which is such a lovely name. And you've been exploring your ideas. Do you want to share that transformative process that got you to the Radiant Dance Teacher?
Sure. So for years, I knew I wanted to come from that place that was unique to me. And actually the term radiant, which it was radiance and then turned it to radiant, came during a sort of a guided meditation. Actually, when somebody was guiding us, and in this meditation we flew off the earth and then came back to the earth and handed ourselves something. And I handed myself this glowing stone and said radiance to myself, and immediately it hit me, because I love the idea of radiance, meaning that everything's being shared, right? Like it goes out, like the radiance of the sun. So I like this idea that my ideas are going to be shared and encompassing all. But what I particularly liked is the idea of the radiant dancer being somebody who's fully in their light, fully in their power, because all the blocks are being removed. And therefore, I'm going to own that I'm a ballet teacher, I'm a modern teacher, but I am here first and foremost to make sure that, let's make sure your brain's integrated so you can learn. let's remove the blocks of any active reflexes, all these things. Let's get you fully embodied and expressive. Those are my three things: integrated, embodied, expressive. And that when those layers happen, that radiant being that you already are is no longer blocked, and it's able to share. And that's, all these decades in teaching dance, and teachers always look for the joy of discovering a student who's talented. And that always bugged me a lot, because it's like everybody in your class is worthy, first of all, of your attention. And I was always curious about what is talent. And the more I get into these tools, I go, talent is somebody who, for whatever reason, home environment, school environment, their own sense of self that somehow didn't get rocked, but they didn't get those blocks. And that therefore their body flows. They seem to flow into the learning naturally. Nothing blows their circuits. And so I've actually always steered away from those most talented and be more interested in the kids and adults as well that seem like they've got those blocks, and then using all these tools to go, okay, what's the foundation? And to me, it was like, okay, well, we can't get embodied unless we're integrated. Okay, we can't be expressive unless we're embodied. And so it became that hierarchy. And that's where the brain gym tools, brain dance as well, of course, and then even the reflex work have just become foundations of, I'm not going to be attempting to teach a dance class and pull out their radiance, or not pull out, allow for their radiance without taking care of those pieces. Mm-hmm. But I will say it's taken a bit of education for the students, because it's natural to look at the people who are talented and wish that you had what they had. But what happens for a lot of people, and I think this is in many areas of our life, sort of the difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. You often see something you want and you go, I guess I just wasn't blessed with it. Mm-hmm. And in the dance world, that runs rampant, because, you have to have been blessed with the right body. Well, maybe you have to have the right proportions if you want to be a ballet dancer by the time you're 18. But if you just want to dance, it doesn't matter. My shins are too short. They always will be. So I can still dance, love it, do it at a high level. So that's been actually the interesting piece, is to use these tools to actually kind of break down and crack open and get rid of them, sort of the fixed mindset of, I can't be that thing that I aspire to. Mm-hmm. So it's really rewarding. And I have to say, I know that when you break that fixed mindset about how they perceive their body and their ability to learn, it doesn't just transform them in dance. That's life. They go out into school or personal relationships, everything. Go for that job interview. They're different. They believe they can have it. So I love the radiant word, because it feels like, what can we do to change the world? Well, share our light with everybody. Just that's all you can do, really, right? Share your light and your kindness and to everybody. And eventually, maybe one day, all our circles overlap and we're all in our light. And, why are you having conflict if you're in your light? Mm-hmm. That's where the word came from. I'm still working on a logo, because I don't want it to be this cheesy logo. So yeah, and because it's both sides, is the teacher sharing and the dancer having that radiance. So I'm like, I don't know how to, still working on it, but that's the vision.
And I think that's the other key piece, is the program that you've been developing and sharing is a two-way program. Because a lot of times it's how to train to be a better dance teacher, but you really train how to be a better educator, but from the inside, right? Where you love what you're doing. And then that radiates to the student. And then also then those techniques go to the student, and the student is now radiating back. A lot of times we have people who they love to dance. They end up being an educator because that's where they get slotted. It doesn't mean they enjoy teaching necessarily. They enjoy dance. They might enjoy the final product. They might enjoy the choreography. They have different aspects, but the way that you've brought these tools together, where it makes learning in flow, I guess is going to be the best way to say that, because dance, when you're training, it's, trial and error and learning. But when that is all in flow, there's this lovely opportunity to enjoy all aspects, even if they're not your favorite.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I see it so much, and I lived it as well, where the amount that so often dance teachers are giving burns them out because they're not giving and receiving, so they're not in flow. And so here we're teaching flow in the body, but we're not actually in flow with our students. And to me, that actually came back to, well, why are you not in flow? And it's like, well, sometimes because you're pushing against a block, a wall, and it could be, yeah, guess what? It's 4:00 in the afternoon. All the students of the before you right now just came from school, and they're all stressed out, and not in a. It doesn't even have to be like stressed out. It could just be learning is stressful. Learning takes a lot of resources. Have they had the chance to integrate before this next learning, or are you the teacher trying to, push that locked door open, or are you filling into a bucket with a hole in it? Like those types of scenarios that then make the act of teaching a lot harder and burnout, and you don't feel like it was worth it today, and and all this stuff. But using these tools, well, geez, now you've got the students, you know what to do to get them ready to learn. Then they're in a whole different state, and then the exchange feels balanced. Mm-hmm. So that's my big thing. And I've actually never read the book. It's sitting on my shelf because maybe I'm getting it through osmosis. But one of my main teachers simply told me about this book that said, the title is Never Work Harder Than Your Students. And that was a message I needed, 20 years ago. But in a weird way, doing all these tools, that ameliorates that problem right there. It's like, well, what am I working hard against? Well, maybe a blocked student. And so what most teachers, all they know to do, because in dance, we've come from if it's hard, suck it up, buttercup, I guess your muscles need to be stronger or you need to stretch more. So there's been this, I just push harder attitude that's embedded in pretty much every dance teacher out there. Instead of wait, stop, hang on, integrate first, do something for more embodiment. Oh, look, guess what? You're not pushing against anything anymore. And now that Never Work Harder Than Your Students isn't about forcing an ownership from your students where you're there being all frustrated, like, come on, I'm not the one doing the work, you should be, or whatever, even if it's never said, that can go on in the head of student and teacher, that flow happens. And so I tell you, I spend the time at the beginning of every class, and I've run experiments when I don't do that to just sort of see how it plays out, and when you take the time, what we did with our tea, when you set the intention, when you feel that group dynamic, when you take the temperature of the integration of everybody and you take the time to do that first, we're all in flow. And so even if I've got an hour class where I feel like I don't have much time and I got to get to it, no, take that 5-10 minutes at the beginning and the rest of the class just sails along and ultimately is way more efficient. Mm-hmm. Way more efficient. So that's been one of my things trying to teach other teachers is when you take the time to do this, I know it took an extra 2 minutes. Trust me, that 2 minutes will be paid back, 100-fold. Mm-hmm. If you take the time to do that brain gym movement, take the time to do a reflex release, boom, it will always be worth it.
Mm-hmm. And the tools that we're talking about, for people who don't know much about bioenergetic wellness tools, we're just talking about, it could be tracing some lines on the body, it could be holding a spot on the head, it could be bringing your hands across your heart, and then some deep breathing, it could be water. Like there's so many tiny little tools that can have profound changes. And then we have patterns of tools that we can put into a row. And we can, so like you're talking about the reflexes, if you wanted to have more grounding, then you might have a series of things you might do in a row to really bring grounding in. So that person who's just come running through the door and they're like, and you go, okay, we just need to pull you back down to the ground a little bit, help you to find where your energy is, get it to flow, and then off you go. And that might take a little bit longer because you strung several pieces together, but they're all simple tools and so profound.
I've used the term suspiciously easy. I use that term often, especially if I'm, guest teaching or whatnot, because I can tell that I show them something and they kind of they give the little side eye, like, what? And I go, yeah, I know it's suspiciously easy, but try it anyway. And then I obviously put out to them going, look, we're meant to be always a self-balancing machine, right? But that means that we needed to have, lived and been in the environment of our ancestors and how we developed. So yes, we're going to play with our feet here because we're not meant to walk around in shoes on flat man-made surfaces. We're meant to always have our feet manipulating. So let's do that. And that's why it works. Or actually, I got to say the one that your listeners can try too, of course, is the very first video I put out for my Radiant Dance Teacher YouTube station, channel, whatever. I was really thought about what's the very first video I'm going to put out, because that's me launching where I come from and what I believe and all that. So in dance teaching, that idea of pulling up, especially in ballet, that idea of denial of gravity, of trying to look light at all times and at all costs. That's why we can float on our toes. Well, that idea has caused a great deal of harm to many people. Denial of gravity doesn't really work. And we wind up, most dancers, myself for decades, wind up sort of disengaging or disintegrating the upper and lower body by pulling up and holding our breath, by using those external muscles. So I thought, the very first thing I'm going to put out there is to help dancers and dance teachers to feel pull up as just a natural energetic state where we are designed to naturally be moving upwards against gravity, or we'd all be little collapsed puddles all the time. We are designed to have that. And so we just do, my first one was this sweep up the central meridian. So the meridian that goes from the pubic bone to the chin and moves in an upward direction just by sweeping the hands up that, and in the case of dancers, taking the time to do a rise and therefore balance, where you're like, okay, this is when I'd often grip my ankles, my glutes, or my core in some way. But when this is moving in the right flow, you just kind of do your rise and go, whoa, it's suspiciously easy. That's weird. And then, you do the opposite, and then you're like, oh, now I feel heavy and everything's working hard. So we do it again. And I'll tell you, I think the youngest I've done this with is 6 or 7, and they can feel it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know what they, hop in the van later and say to mom, oh, mom, we did these goofy arm exercises and I could balance. And I'm seen as this weird voodoo. I don't know. But I'm pleased that from when I first started learning a lot of this stuff to now, that at least the meridian system is now being accepted in even Western medicine, that they go, yeah, we found it. We know it exists. Sorry, we thought it was woo-woo for a long time, but now we know, that it's much more acceptable now than it was even 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not that weird anymore to talk about it. And I now talk about it freely to go, okay, first of all, we're going to make sure some of the flow is happening. And then we do it before and after, and they go, okay. And even if they don't fully understand it, they're on board. So that's one that I check in with that on myself like almost every day. And
yes, so profound. Yeah. So for those people that are on the podcast, what Mariah-Jane was doing was sweeping her hand off the body, but in front of the pubic bone, coming up the front of the body like you're zipping up your jacket to the bottom lip, and then just removing the hand away, and then rising up on the toes or on the ball of the foot to see what it feels like through the ankles, the feet, the muscles, to notice what that feels like. And then you can trace downwards, which is go from the bottom of the lip downwards towards the pubic bone and sweep down, then try to do that rise, see what the difference is, and then go, just make sure you always finish up. So make sure you trace back up when you're finished, zip the jacket up. So, and that's central meridian for those people that want that term. It is so powerful, and if you've got a day that you're off, if you don't check in with that you could do anything you want, technique wise, to try to get something. But if central system is not working, you're not going to get it. And it just takes just zip up that jacket 3 times and away you go.
And like I've done a lot of other sort of therapy stuff where you're working on like even the gratitude appreciation and working on your perspective and all these things and relanguage and stuff. And I believe in all of that. But I'll tell you, if your energy system's off, it's almost like you can't even get to that healthy perspective and it'll feel very false. So yeah, if you're somebody out there struggling to say, I want to have a positive attitude today, that's my plan. I'm going to have a positive attitude and I've written my gratitude journal or whatever. But it's like, well, hang on, zip up first, get your energy flowing in that upwards lift away from gravity. So you don't, I think even metaphorically, if I don't feel like I'm sucked to the earth, but instead I've got my own power, what am I going to do? That, yeah, it's so profound. So yeah, that one, thankfully I use a lot. And thankfully too, a lot of our movements, port de bras and dance, go up from there. And so I talk to the dancers about that every time we do that, we can imagine we're doing that, even though it's a little further away from the body, to keep reinvesting in that. It's all through. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's nice to know too, especially if you're working with little people, it's nice for them to know that every time they go to practice that action, they're giving themselves some love, and we don't ever say that. It's just repeat, repeat, repeat if it's rote learning. But if you're saying, yeah, give yourself some love and then open that up, and it's like, oh, that's lovely. And, how expressive are you going to be if you're doing it that way over, let's repeat that again, right? And it's like, oh, repeat it again.
What I love about all these tools really is that what you're doing once you've presented them with a toolbox and there's a couple of things, you can say, okay, well, choose the one that you need or that type of thing. And therefore this act of constantly noticing. And I think we notice in our bodies, in our minds when we're being frustrated and whatnot, but I don't think we always take that extra step to go, okay, well, what tools do I have to switch that right now? Rather than just forging ahead. I think and I don't know where your listeners are all coming from. I believe it's a little bit more of a Western world idea of that push, 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 forge ahead. And only recently have I started to really embrace the old wait, stop, rest, re-energize, instead of push, push, push. It's weird. I've learned these tools, but to actually apply them all the time and not have the old patterns of, well, really, the best friend, the old suck it up, buttercup, that our dance teachers probably said in a various different ways. But it was basically, if you want to get stronger or you want to accomplish anything, it requires work. And I think these tools have really made me think and constantly be reframing what hard work is. It's not what I grew up thinking it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. And hard work, I go, you know what? The only time I'd call something hard work is when I've got the job, which, I'll never have, of pushing a boulder up a hill. Like, that's hard work. I'm sorry. That's hard work. And go, so if you feel like you're doing hard work like that metaphorically in your life, stop, hang on. What tools have you got? Does it need to be that hard, or can you get back and flow? And that now I'm just guiding the rock down the hill instead, right? That you switch it, like, oh, downhill, yay. So I'm still working on that a little bit, and I find that me working on it in the dance studio is the best place for it, because that's where so many of my work ethic habits came from. And then I'm absolutely determined to have a whole crop of dance teachers and dancers who can get to those high levels should they choose, and have a work ethic with it, but not a work ethic that damages them or lowers their belief in themselves, or ends up damaging the body, the mind, or the spirit, or all three. And I think that's where the dance community has been. And the dance community is slowly waking up to how damaging many of the practices have been. And there's been a real turnaround just in the last few years, actually. Even the Me Too movement has sparked a lot of change, where people are sort of, it's almost like it made it okay to speak up about feeling like there's been some abuse of some sort. And and therefore, oh, wait a minute, not even necessarily say that that teacher violated me in some ways, but to be able to realize I've crossed the line with respect to my own body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I think things are finally changing in the dance world. So I believe that I'm kind of on the cutting edge, and that this stuff is going to, it's seeping in, but maybe soon it will be flowing in, rushing in a little bit more, because I think the world's getting ready for it. And, with the pandemic, to try to find the silver linings, because, what else should we be doing but trying to find some positives? Is that, again, even mental health became, so many people were struggling being at home, being disconnected and whatnot, that it's being okay to talk about it now. Mm-hmm. And therefore, if it's okay to talk about it up here, can we talk about it even here, where you just go, well, how are you feeling today? No, like, really, how are you feeling today? Oh, now that people can own how they're feeling, then come the tools to go, well, do you want to keep feeling that way? Or can we maybe do a little something for you to feel better? Mm-hmm. And I think until people admit that they were struggling with this, struggling with that, struggling against their body, struggling with their thoughts, they're not necessarily looking for the tools of change until they really admit that they were not at their best, and going, well, I deserve to be at my best. And that's where these tools show up. Mm-hmm. And again, they're almost suspiciously easy, aren't they?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And yeah. One of my learnings just this last year, is finishing off my dissertation, has been really looking at when you're in balance and flow and when you're not, because that lens changes. And so when you were talking about the struggle, or maybe somebody who's feeling depressed or anxious because they were home through this pandemic or whatever situations, but then realizing that feeling of anxiousness is actually just telling you you're not in balance. And then we have these tools that can bring us into balance, and all of a sudden we have a completely different perspective. We don't have the monkey thoughts rolling through our head. Right. And for a dancer who has, my legs aren't long enough, my point isn't good enough, I can't remember the routines, and you're critiqued all day long in the studio trying to get that perfect look, or line up with the 10 other dancers and try to make that image that you're looking for. So you have a lot of critiquing. You want to come back to that balance and flow. And so I've really been reflecting on, when I have those thoughts coming through my mind at some point in the day, stopping and going, how come I'm saying that? And have I taken the time? That's like my new kind of cue. And it's like, oh, you know what? I haven't drank any water for the last 3 hours. Let me go get a drink of water and reflect for a moment. Oh, maybe now I need a little Tai Chi movement. Maybe I need to put a piece of music on and, dance around the kitchen. But then just really to engage and go, yeah, I can shift how I feel.
Absolutely. And it's not that I need to go, again, nothing against therapy, but it's not like I need to go have a bunch of therapy just to be nice to myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like that, maybe, dealing with a real trauma that needs processing, that's a little different. I know we're talking about other different things, but if, today I'm feeling frustrated and low energy, let's not just accept that and push through anyway. Let's go, that's not my natural state. And I think that's the interesting piece. Just because it feels natural right now, because I'm there, that doesn't mean it's my natural state. It means things kind of knocked us off and we can rebalance. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the piece that I know I'm working on, certainly in dance class and then in everyday life, to remember that. And on top of that, just now that I'm thinking of it, spending so much time on the computer, we all need to know, as people being on a computer, that staring at a screen, being in that two-dimensional world, the electromagnetic, that's unbalancing. Mm-hmm. Like, it's gonna tire you out and stress you out. And so ever since I've had to do more and more computer work, my housekeeping has upped its game a lot, because I have to keep getting up and moving. I need an eyeball break. I need a movement break. And I do that. It's like, I'm not dusting every 2 weeks. I'm dusting every 3 days, because I just got to get up and move.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And and that even just that, but then to go, no, I could also take the time to do I really love doing my thinking caps. This is from Brain Gym, because then it releases the neck, like and the eyes from all the staring and whatnot. So rolling.
Do you want to describe that for the people on the podcast?
Sure, yeah. So taking your thumb and usually your index finger, going to the very top of your ear where it connects to your skull, putting the thumbs at the back, sort of like a backing board now to push against as you uncurl, like trying to reverse the curl direction of your ears. And I go from the top to the bottom, and I uncurl and I squeeze pretty hard. They can take it until they get quite pink. And I even love doing a bit of leverage when I'm there, like pulling on my ears a little bit. And now, you know what? We didn't do it, but we could have done. So I ask you, next time you do this, do a little before and after, and just checking the level of rotation, the ease of rotation, and therefore the neck muscles. Then do those little ear rolling, and then you'll find, oh, that just relieves it. My dancers love that one for like doing pirouettes and having a good, the squatting head, the ease of turning the head. They get totally on board with that. But I also know it does a lot of other wonderful things, helps your listening even. Yeah. So
And for dancers, that's finding the beat of the music. If you rub your ears, then the whole group will be on the beat. So if you have somebody who struggles to find the rhythm or is always a little bit delayed, or the person that is performing and they're anxious about it, they'll speed up. And that actually will bring them right back into tempo, which when I discovered that was that was lovely. So everybody backstage would be in the wings, rubbing their ears, ready to go on.
Yeah, I love that. Well, my understanding from that move is that the ears have all these acupressure points, and something like you're stimulating like 400 acupressure points just by rubbing ears. And so for me, I do it. When I got into it the most actually was when I was still having to do a lot of driving. And so I would do things like that, like it's a stoplight. It's the one with all the left-hand turn lanes. I'm going to be here for 3 minutes. Okay, well, I'm going to do my ears. And so I do all those things literally in the car on the way to teaching. I'm like, why not? Well, I mean, you could sweep that meridian sweep. You could be sitting in your car and just remember to do a little up sweep, especially if you're like getting frustrated by traffic. Just calm your ears, do a few up sweeps, and just like, okay, it's all good. I'm just going to listen to the music on the radio. Yeah, so I sneak it in everywhere I can.
And that's the thing, right? These tools, once you've played with one of them, they just pop in. And it's just like, I could just throw that in there right now. And then you don't even think about it anymore. And a lot of people are always thinking, well, I don't have time for my self-care. I'm too busy. The schedule's full today. And it's like, it doesn't need any extra time. There's lots of things you can be doing while you're on a Zoom call. I do some of it, if I'm going to say I'm watching my, Amazing Race Canada, I'm going to watch my show tonight. I do some of that stuff even while watching my shows. If it's my downtime, then I like to actually do it at the front of that. And then I actually relax and recharge more. In a weird way, I feel more energized generally, right? But then it's this interesting balance of relaxed and energized, which I think is our best state, right? Where you're like, I can go either way. I could go to sleep right now. Or I could, get up and do a really a task that requires a lot of energy. Which way do you want me to go? And, the term balance, like it took me a while in Brain Gym hearing the word, we're doing a balance, for me to really get it. It felt weird because of decades of thinking of being on balance and dance. And that idea of being on balance and dance, which I know it's not true anymore because I had been taught to have it as a real state of stillness, that if you're on balance, you're still, rather than dynamic balance. But now when I think of that we're bringing ourselves into balance, where I could go either way. I could be off like a rabbit, doing a bunch of stuff in a very healthy, over-focused way, or I could just relax and chill out. And that my state takes me either way based on my intentions or the outside stimulus of what makes sense to do now. And now I look at balance differently in that term in the bioenergetics world of doing a balance. I look at it differently. It took a little while though for the lens of
what a dancer's balance is. And so therefore maybe anybody else out there who might go, why do they keep using this word balance? And what does that really mean? To me, balance means that we know our home, we go off balance, but always know how to come back. And it also means I can choose and go anywhere because I'm in that home state. So I could up my energy, or I could lower my energy to not lower my energy, use it for sleep. And therefore my sleep is actually recuperative because I'm in a different state even before I go to sleep. A lot of people go to sleep because they're exhausted, which is not the same as to go recharge now.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a very different state.
Yeah. 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 People laugh because they say, oh, I didn't get much sleep last night. I only got 5 hours or 6 hours or something. And I'll say, well, you only need 4. And I go, no, I need 8. And I said, no, you only need 4. You need to go through that cycle. And if it happens to be one of the nights where you only got 6 hours, you didn't get 8, then you say, I only needed 4. And then the whole body goes, yeah, I'm covered. Off you go, right? Because otherwise it's like yawning, and then it's like, oh, I was short sleep, I didn't get enough, and you just drain yourself right out. But it's how you frame it, what you do with it, and then, throw a couple tools in, and the body goes, okay, I'm ready. Let's do this.
I love that actually. And again, translating that easily to dancers to go, okay, so we're doing it one more time. We've got the energy for that, or thinking of professional dancers who are in class and rehearsal all day and still have the energy for performance at night. When you've got the intention, I will never say that we're the master of our body, because I think it's not a master obey sort of relationship, but that the communication matters. Let's put it that way. The communication matters. If we go, we're good, right? And the body goes, yeah, you're right. We are good.
Yeah. And then being able to ask, because with the tools, we can muscle monitor, we can check in, what is it the body needs? So if it needs something for the performance, yes, you rehearsed all day, and it needs something for the performance, we can ask, what do you need? And how do you bring balance and flow to the system? And then the body goes, oh, thank you. I have that. Now I can perform. Instead of saying, I am exhausted, but I'm old style, right? I'm going to push through this, and, I'm not going to be the one left behind, or I'm not going to be the one that they're going to say, it's your fault that we all fell out of that pose because you weren't, 100%, but you're able to say, no, I've got everything ready to go, and off you do it. Yeah.
Yeah. My dream would be to see dancers take the time before class, the middle of class, end of class, like just those minutes or 2 for themselves, that they dig into the toolbox that they've been given and they just pick and choose what they need. That would be my dream. And therefore, the dancers before, if you were to watch them 10 minutes backstage, there's people doing this and that and this and that and this and that. They're all different, and they're all tapping into, what do I need right now to have my best performance? And even, what do I need to recuperate the best for another day? That would be my dream. Yeah. I will say, actually, I've got to tell you, my dream came true just the tiniest bit. I had been doing some subbing, guest teaching, where I got to see them, I think 3 or 4 times. Some senior girls who were dancing in the studio was putting on this full-length Cinderella ballet. And so, of course, I have to go watch it. And I go zipping backstage during intermission. And I was back there, really close to curtain time. I was almost about to miss the start, because I was back in the wings wishing them luck. But as I come up and I see them, there's all these girls standing there in their gorgeous tutus doing, from Brain Gym, the hookups. So the ankles are crossed, and they're all standing there like this. And these are girls that I'd taught that to like a year before. And I hadn't seen them from that time. So I knew them for a little bit. Now they're in this ballet. And I'm like, oh, you're doing it. And they just kind of gave me this weird look of like, well, yes, of course it works. And that to do their hookups backstage just before going on, they, as a group, they knew there's nothing better they can do than to do that action. And again, I'd only taught it to them in 1 or 2 classes like a year before. And I was so flattered. That was my ego. I was so flattered that they remembered. But really, then as soon as my ego got out of the way, went, they got it. It was profound. It is profound. And when something profoundly works for the body, I think we can trust that the body will remind the brain, hey, can we do that thing?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's super important when you do something, one of these tools, to really do a before and after noticing in the body, so that the body will choose to say, can we keep doing this, please? And then you're not having to stress yourself out by going, oh, these tools sound great, but it's another thing I have to remember. It's like, no, your body's probably going to remind you, hey, can we please do that?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened with these girls. And it was quite a thrill. I'd love to see that, that being a vision, that I visit any backstage theater, and dancers, actors, everybody's doing that. And they go, yeah, go out, have a good time, do your thing. And actually, a little plug, I did a TED Talk about movement in November 21. And I absolutely practiced what I preach. What was I doing during even the introduction of my name? I was still standing there in the hookups position going, there's nothing better I can do for myself. My script is over there. If I haven't learned it by now, the last 30 seconds isn't going to change that. But being able to have my best ready for me, yeah. So I sit in my hookups, and my partner, who's back there ready to support me, knew to just step away, let me do my brain gym thing, leave me alone. And it worked. So yeah.
So for those on the podcast, just to make sure that you know, because I do the hookup as well, it's Wayne Cook who devised it. He has it. There's two versions, but the easiest one, when you're in a situation where you have to stand somewhere, or if you're on a Zoom call, you're sitting, then you cross your right leg over your left, cross your right hand over your left hand, and you can link your fingers if you wish, or you can just cross your hands over your chest if that's another option, if you can't link your fingers, and you just hold that position. And when you're finished that position, the second one is to put your feet side by side and then place your fingertips of both hands together. And you can place them in front of your belly button, in front of your heart. If you want some creative ideas, you can put it in front of your eyebrows, just at your forehead. And it's a wonderful way to really calm the system and prep for something. And I use that constantly in meetings. Because most of the time on a Zoom call, no one can actually see I've got, my hands and my feet crossed, and I can have a conversation, but I can also keep everything really calm and relaxed and keep that energy flowing. So
I swear it's true. I used the hookups once. I was driving quite a long ways on the highway out to teach, and there was an accident on the highway, and traffic was at a standstill for like 20 minutes or something like that. I'm now late. And class doesn't start without the teacher, right? Like everybody, you cannot slide in 3 minutes late. Everybody knows. And I'm like looking at being maybe even 10 minutes late, which is like a horror story for a dance teacher. And so I'm going on the highway, and I've just merged off to a bit more of the sort of the country road to get there. And I was speeding. I get pulled over. I share with the lovely officer, I'm sorry. Yes, I know I was speeding. I'm about to be late. I've got kids waiting for me. And she's like, no, I'm sorry. I still got to give you a ticket. Anyway, I was like, okay, my entire wage I'm about to earn is now going to go to this ticket. But I'm like, nope. And so I sat there in hookups in the car while she went off. And I swear I just was totally calm and just sat there and tried to feel my circle emanating to include her and her car in front of me. And she just kind of turns around, walks back and goes, you seem like a lovely lady. It's okay. I'm going to let you go on this one. And I'm like, and I kind of go, it is their discretion, right? And so I go, what if my beautiful calming energy indeed radiated out to her, and she just went, oh, I feel like an act of kindness is who I want to be. And she just turned around and said, you see, I'll never forget that you seem like a lovely lady. And I barely said anything, but I guess my vibe didn't go into that riled up, I'm angry, how dare you stop me, I'm now shooting daggers at you with my eyes. Like that didn't happen. And so this is not me telling you all to go speeding. I'm just saying, maybe if you're doing a customer returns or something, do a hookups before you go up there, and they're going to go, yeah, we're here to help. Sure. And maybe all world leaders, we'd have a different world if our world leaders all use these tools. Oh man.
Yeah.
But that's another discussion.
That's another one. I think we've kind of weaved in and out of all of the topics we wanted to talk about, and which brings us to a close, because I know we're well over time, but I knew that would happen with you, Mariah-Jane, because you and I always have lovely full discussions and end up in such interesting places with the tools because of our mutual passions with dance. Would you like to just share where people can find you, how they can get to your resources?
Right, of course. Yes, thank you. So if you take a Google of the Radiant Dance Teacher, when you're on YouTube, you will find my channel. And on Facebook, there is a nice, healthy Facebook group there, but it is a private group because I wanted people to really feel like they can share. So you can request to join. I would probably say yes, but I did want to keep it private. So the Radiant Dance Teacher Facebook group as well, you can check that. And you can reach me either through the channel, like making comments, the Facebook group, making comments, or a private message. And also I would love for you to check out my TED Talk, which you can do my name, Mariah-Jane Thies, on YouTube, and that should come up. Or if you go to the actual TED channel, you see that'll come up. Or if you're keen to know what the title is, because it tells you a bit about what it's about, the title is Your Movement Habits Create Your Life. And it's a little bit more about my journey with movement diversity and the need for that to balance us. So that's a slightly different take on balancing, but actually very much like they're linked like this, of course. So I would encourage you to, check me out, the Radiant Dance Teacher, and or just my name for finding my TED Talk. And make a comment, please. Ted loves comments on my TED Talk, and I'd love to see this talk get lots of views, not for the ego part, but to go, if you do listen to the full talk, it's about, for personal development, looking at our movement is a very underutilized thing. I don't know why people don't look at our body and therefore our movement as a foundational piece of who we are and how we're managing life. So I think it's actually a pretty necessary one, and it's not about telling you to go dance. It's a little different, but yeah, so please check that out. And thank you so much, Michelle, for having me on. This is lovely. And you're right. I knew we would chat beyond the allotted time. Thank you, anybody who's still here listening. I really appreciate it. I know Michelle does too.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just, we want to spark the ideas. We want to inspire people. Check out these tools. Check out what's happening. Some of the tools that we talked about today have been written in a book called BioEnergetic Essentials, which is a free book, which you can get on canbewell.org website. On the main page, you just go to the right-hand side. It says free ebook. Just click on it. And that one is free. And otherwise, you can find hard copies if you're interested in that as well. But you can check that out through the inside of that PDF. So thank you so much, Mariah-Jane, for everything. And I wish you the very best with the Radiant Dance Teacher. I know the workshops that are coming up, you're going to do a fantastic job of inspiring people to think differently and to think well for people. And I'm so grateful that you're doing what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. Well, back at you. I'm glad we got to meet all those years ago. So yes.
Exactly.
And good luck in all that you're doing and sharing these tools. Listeners, you will not regret it. Everyone has the potential to make some pretty profound change. Even if you just used it once at the right time, you never know. But make them an ongoing habit. Yeah, pretty powerful stuff. Yeah.
Thank you. So you've been listening to Be Well with Michelle Greenwell, and we invite you to take some time today and throughout your week to create space for your inspirations. Keep the joy and passion for living front and center. And both of us would say, find a good piece of music and get up and dance.
Yeah, get your boogie on.
Awesome.